Hey, welcome back to Room 237. This is John. Coming at you with another a movie review. Finally, after all those favorites and countdowns. So yesterday I did my top random favorite general films of all time. This was on there, so I talked about it a little bit. And then I kind of thought about it throughout the day. And then last night I was like, I'm actually in the mood to rewatch this. I did, still enjoyed it very much, so now I'll do a review of it. That is 2007's There Will Be Blood. I'm trying to cover up that glare, but whatever. And yeah, this is just a really shitty, like, $2 something DVD that I bought. Absolutely no features at all. Really flimsy cardboard. I had the Blu-ray. I don't know what happened to it. I don't know if some of my stuff went missing or what. This was a couple years ago. But yeah, the Blu-ray. I like this cover more, but I wish I still had the Blu-ray. Daniel Day-Lewis won Oscar for Best Actor, which he deserved. This is the first movie I ever saw with Daniel Day-Lewis. He's now one of my favorite actors. I mean, he was great in My Left Foot. Loved him in Gangs of New York. He stole that movie from DiCaprio and everyone else. Liked him as Lincoln. Crucible was alright. But Daniel Day-Lewis is, there's a reason he's the only guy to win 3 Best Actor Oscars, because he's awesome. This is his best movie, his best performance. Written and directed by Paul Thomas Anderson. He does a lot of serious films. He did this, obviously. He did Punch Drunk Love, which is an Adam Sandler drama that I've never seen. I can't believe I'm saying this, but because it's Paul Thomas Anderson, Adam Sandler movie I wouldn't mind seeing, because I'm not an Adam Sandler fan. I was going to mention that in my comedy countdown, but I forgot. He did Boogie Nights, which I really like. I watched Boogie Nights on Netflix, and I thought that was a very good movie. But anyway, this one, I guess it's based on a novel called Oil by Upton Sinclair, but only like the first half of it. Like the second half of that book goes off the rails. They kind of do their own thing with it to a point. It's 3 hours long, 158 minutes, so just over, is that right? 120? It's 2.5. Yeah, so 2.5 hours. Feels like 3. Because it is very slow paced. But I still really like it. It's enough to keep my attention. There's 3 time frames. We start in 1891. In my video yesterday of general favorites, I said it starts out in 1980. Don't know why I said that, but 1891, 1911, then 1927. We see Daniel Day-Lewis. He plays a guy named Daniel Plainview. In the beginning, he's a silver miner or silver prospector, whatever you want to call him. He's all alone. He's down in these holes by himself looking for silver. And I mean, you don't even get a word of dialogue until 15 minutes in. So there's that. He has dynamite, he has everything he needs. He finds silver. And then, also I mentioned how there's like that one note siren kind of sound like in Silent Hill. That's at the very opening of the film, where you're seeing like the hills and the desert. Almost feels like a Hills Have Eyes movie. So he finally finds silver. He's climbing out. One of the things break, and he falls down. He hurts his leg. That's when you get this scene. Which, this is the first indicator of what kind of character he is. You know, his leg's all fucked up, but he wants the money so bad, he crawled all the way to town. Now he's just laying there relaxing while they write out his money. He uses that money to start a small oil prospecting company with just a few guys. He's working with them. I don't know if it implies that he invented the oil derrick or altered it in some way. But, you know, there's a part in the beginning, during that part, where, you know, there's an accident. Something happens to a man down in the hole. He had a baby. Day-Lewis, you know, finds the baby, decides to take him in. So you're like, okay, this is like a genuine... He's a hard worker, but he's a good guy at heart. He's taking this baby in when he doesn't have to, but he does. So then we jump to 1911, and that's when he goes from being, you know, dressed like a worker and being dirty and bearded to looking like a man of wealth. He has this young boy next to him who's 10 years old. So, 1891. So then it must have been 1901 when the oil stuff was happening. When he first got the baby. Okay, so yeah. Oh, that makes sense. So 1911, he says, you know, his son, H.W., is his business partner. The kid doesn't say much. He's kind of creepy. But, you know, we see how he talks to people about buying land and whatever. He's like, I am an oil man. And then, of course, Paul Dano, who's in a lot of movies I've seen. He was in Prisoners with Hugh Jackman. He was the mute son on Little Miss Sunshine. He comes in, he says his name is Paul. He was like, give me $500. I'll tell you where my family's ranch is. There's oil. He gives it to him, but he says, you know... And then this is when... Well, he says, you know, I'll give you this $500. If I go out there and find out you're lying, I'm going to find you. I'm going to take back more than my money. So it's like, yeah, he might be a nice, genuine, good-hearted guy, but now you're starting to see he's not one you want to fuck with when, especially his money is on the line. So him and HW go out there, but of course he doesn't want them thinking that there's oil or a gold mine under them. So they say they're hunting for quail. And that's when his brother Eli, who's also played by Paul Dano, we don't see Paul again throughout the whole movie, but we see Eli. And then the next day, they're not hunting for quail, they're just like shooting, so it sounds like they are. They find earthquake oil, which I guess means there's a bunch of it. So Day-Lewis decides, you know, we can't have them know that, you know, oil prices are up here. I want to offer them quail prices, which is down here. So he tries to offer the father of the ranch like $3,700. Eli knows about the oil. So and this is when, to me, the whole reason why this is called There Will Be Blood is because from this moment on until the end, there is a feud between Daniel and Eli. So much so that at several points, each one gets a turn at getting the upper hand and humiliating the other one, until it just keeps growing, and eventually there will be blood. He's like, he keeps interrupting Daniel, who's trying to do the smiley, charming salesman face for the dad, whose name is Abel. Eli keeps interrupting him about this oil, and then he finally just snaps and gives him this look like, what will you do, Eli? Do you want to pay for it? Do you want to do it all? How will you do it without the money I give you for this land? Eli says, give me $10,000 for my church. Daniel's like, huh, yeah, that's a good one. I don't want to just go over every single little plot point, but, you know, that's pretty much, from after that moment is when the film really starts to pick up. You know, basically, he buys the whole town, except for there's one bit of property he can't buy, which is owned by a guy named Bandy. He won't sell him. He says he wants to see him in person, but Daniel's like, no, I'm the guy buying this town. Like, he'll come around if he wants my money. And one thing just leads to another. Like, they finally get, well, Eli has two younger sisters, one of which, HW, they're the same age. They're playing together. And one night HW tells Daniel that her name's Mary. He's like, Mary says her father beats her if she doesn't pray, because they're a very religious family. So there's like another part where, you know, they're celebrating the oil derrick being done and the beginning of production. And he's talking to Mary, it's just like, are you happy that I came here? It's like, your father doesn't hit you anymore, does he? No more hitting. While he's sitting across the table. So the dad just looks at Daniel like defeated, and Daniel's just like sitting there all confident, sipping off his flask. Like, he's really like, he really seems to have like an untouchable sort of, pretty much if I want anything I can make it happen kind of guy, with his wealth and just his demeanor. Basically, Eli wants to bless the well, or the derrick, when they unveil it before they finally turn it on. He's like, sure, fine. And he wants Daniel to give like a little speech about how God sent him and all this stuff so that he can bless it in front of everybody. Daniel sort of gives the speech but says it about Mary, and then has HW turn on the derrick. So he pretty much snubbed Eli, like, almost to his face. So that was like the first bit. And then all this bad shit keeps happening. Like, there's another accident where a guy dies down in the hole. There's another one where there's pressure buildup, and all that shit starts happening. Which, during this accident, HW is nearby and the pressure hits him and he loses his hearing. And Eli tries saying, like, you know, if only you would let me bless the well. And then HW starts acting weird after he loses his hearing. Because it's like, I understand if you lose your hearing, you don't really want to speak, because you can't hear yourself, but he just like sits there and just like stares. He doesn't, even if Daniel's like telling him to drink something, he just like, he doesn't interact, he doesn't communicate. I guess maybe he's angry, like he fights the doctors or whatever. Also, during this scene, which this goes in film time, this scene goes on for like hours, like late at night into the day. They're just watching all this fire come out. I really like the music. It sounds just like a John Carpenter score. It's just like this, boom, 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 boom. Then it's just like these like, boom, boom, boom. Like those weird instruments you have in like elementary school where it's like you clang them together. I don't know. So then they get that under control. Shortly after HW loses his hearing, this guy shows up randomly. And I really don't want to spoil the whole thing. I guess I should put spoilers in the title for this. Because this is a movie that, you know, it was big when it came out, but I don't know a lot of people that have seen it, and I would like people to see this. But, this guy shows up, says tells Daniel he's his brother. He gets a lot of stuff right, you know, like the names of mutual family members, where he's from, and all that. HW goes through his stuff, and we don't really know why he does it. I think we're supposed to suspect that it's out of jealousy or anger, but he sets the guy's bed on fire while he's laying in it. And that really enrages Daniel. And the guy that plays his brother, Henry, I haven't seen since the original Brandon Fraser, The Mummy. He's the guy that plays Benny, the one that keeps getting hurt. He does a good job in this, though. There's a part before the bed gets set on fire. Daniel and Henry are sitting outside, talking about life, their success. They're both drinking. They're both drunk. And Daniel gives this speech about how, like, I have a competition in me. I have an anger in me. I don't want anybody else to succeed. I want to be the only one to succeed. I hate most people. I look at people and I don't see anything worth liking. I wish I could just move away from everyone. And, you know, all I gotta do is look at people to tell I don't have to like them. I don't have to look past them to get anything else I need. So it's just like that whole beginning of the movie, like when he's talking to groups of people, just like, you know, in the beginning he was very upfront. He tries to sound very pleasing to everybody. Like in the beginning when he meets Paul asks him what church he belongs to, and he's just like, I like all churches. I don't belong to any one. I like them all. And or when he's giving speeches to like the town and the workers, he's like, I've met some of you, and I hope in the months to come I get to meet you all. You know, we all work together, live together, that way we can all prosper together. He sounds like a very people-concerned person, but then you find out that's just like the businessman part of him. He's really just, this is when the greedy bastard, that was a word I wanted to use in my last video, was greed and greedy, but I couldn't think of it. That starts coming out in him. After HW sets the bed on fire, he sends him to the school for the deaf. But it's pretty, like, abandoning. Like, they're sitting on a train. He says he has to go talk to the conductor, and he just leaves him on the train. And HW's all pissed. He sort of takes Henry in to work with him, talking about pipelines and stuff with all these creditors, excuse me. But they're like, you know, why don't you take care of your son? You know, take some time. And he's just like, you ever mention my son again, I'll come to your house, I'll slit your throat. Get more ruthless. He sort of drops like an inside thing to Henry, and he doesn't know what he's talking about. So that's when he realizes this guy's been bullshitting me. Which actually, no, before that, there's another part where Eli is walking up to him and he's asking him, when will we get our money? And Daniel just starts beating him up and rubbing his face and head into the mud or the oil, whatever it is, and just like slapping it all over his face and pretty much mocking his faith. Said, "Aren't you a healer? Aren't you a man of God? Well, why can't you heal my boy? So I'm gonna bury you under the earth, Eli." So that's like another instance of their feud. Oh, but earlier we get to see what kind of evangelist Eli is. This is like even before he asked to bless the church. No, it's not. It's after, because Daniel has to go ask him to do like a funeral for the guy that had the accident. He's like a evangelical priest who talks like, "And that ghost won't get out." Like, he does like this to say like he's taking the ailment ghost out of people, and he like throws his arms around. He's like, "And it left." Like, shit, I think is bullshit. But anyway, so after he attacks Eli, that's when he drops the inside thing that Henry doesn't know what he's talking about. So they go out and get drunk, and then that night he asks him a question about their childhood. Because even though they never knew each other, they had the same father and they were in the same area. Because back in like the 1800s, you didn't have to go far to start a new life. I think it was Dave Chappelle that said you can go like 11 minutes down the road and no one will know where you were. Because there's no Facebook and shit back then. Start a whole new life. Guy gets it wrong. Of course, he takes this as like severe treachery. Kills him. The next day, there's this old man. You find out it was William Bandy, who's by this time, instead of just drilling the oil, he wants to do a pipeline. I mean, I think at least a year or so has passed since they've been out there. And he was like, I asked you to come out and speak to me before, but you never came. He keeps making up excuses. He's hungover. He doesn't want to deal with it. He was like, "I'll give you $3,000 to let me do a pipeline." And he's like, "No. I want you to be part of my church, the Church of the Third Revelation, which is Eli's church." And of course, Daniel was like, so you want nothing to do with Eli's church or Eli. So I'll give you $5,000. Of course, Bandy implies that he knows about the murder that happened the night before. He was like, "Cleanse your sins and be part of our church." I don't know if he says then you can do a pipeline or then we can talk about it. But anyway, Daniel goes. He's gonna be baptized, not with water, but like in front of everyone. So Eli humiliates him by making him repeat, "I've abandoned my child," and he keeps like slapping the sin out of him. So Eli got his chance. But then at the end, Daniel goes to shake his hand, and you can see his mouth move, but you can't hear what he's saying. You find out at the very end. So then he gets HW back off the train. They try to patch things up. HW learns sign language. Mary learns sign language. Find out they get married. We jump up to 1927. HW and Mary are now married. Daniel lives in a big, beautiful mansion. But he's a raging alcoholic, and he's just a recluse. He never leaves. It's just him and his butler. he just like sits in his mansion and shoots at shit. And then, as I've said in my video yesterday, it's just a verbal confrontation at the end of this that is one of the most hardest things to watch that I've seen. That is when HW and his sign interpreter comes in. And I mean, by this time, Daniel's all scraggly, he's wearing a robe, his hair's all messy and greasy, and he's just all like that Daniel Day-Lewis look that he gets. And he tells him, you know, Dad, I love you and everything, but it's time for me to make a change. I'm going to go to Mexico with Mary, start my own oil company. And Daniel, you know, kiboshes or however you say it, hodboshes. He says, fuck that. And, you know, he keeps making fun of the interpreter and making fun of HW for needing the interpreter. He's like, so this makes you my competitor. He's like, no, it's not like that. And I mean, he just says some hurtful shit to him. Like, he's just like, you know, if you love me, go ahead and say it, and don't just stand there and flap your hands and have your lapdog, have your little lapdog, woof, 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 say it. And I mean, then he tells him, he's like, you're not even my son, which he's like, Dad, don't say that. He's like, no, you're not. You never were. And then he mockingly, like, he's like, you're an orphan. An orphan from a basket in the middle of the desert. And he just keeps mocking and saying, he's just like, I just needed a sweet face to help me buy land. You're a bastard from a basket. And then, you know, he's like, I thank God I have none of you in me. Him and his interpreter leave, and he just keeps yelling at him like, bastard from a basket. Bastard from a basket. Yeah, I think we're supposed to believe, like, well, I'll get into that later. So then after that, we do get like a short little reminiscent scene of him remembering him playing with HW when he was a kid. I don't know if that means that's what he's thinking of, or if it's just like, oh, he did care at one point, but now he's where he is. Then Daniel's passed out. His mansion has a bowling alley. He's all passed out. His butler wakes him up, and Eli is there. Eli's talking about how he's been working in a religious radio and all this stuff. He says that Bandy has passed away, finally. So now they can start drilling. But he's like, he wants $100,000 and the $5,000 that's owed him plus interest from earlier in the film. Day-Lewis is like, oh sure, yeah, that's no problem. He's like, there's just one condition. And he asks what that is, and he's like, I want you to tell me that you're a false prophet and God is a superstition. He says he can't say that, and he's like, oh sure he can. So he starts saying it, but he keeps building it up. Like, say it like it's at your sermon. You have a full congregation. People in the back need to hear you. So we start screaming it, and he keeps making him scream it until he's pretty much broken down, almost into tears. And then he tells them that that land's already been drilled because of what he worked out with Bandy before, and because of the... Actually, no, it wasn't because of that arrangement. It's because he put the pipeline in around it, I think. So he drained it dry anyway. So there's no work to be done, and there's no way he can give Eli any money. Well, he could out of his own money, but he ain't gonna do that. So he pretty much just had him do that for his own amusement. And which is just, going back to back from the scene with HW and the scene with Eli is just like, how vicious has this man gotten? Where he's just treating everybody like this. And, so, that's when he's like, I've sinned. He doesn't really say what he does, but, our economy's crumbling. I'm in so much debt. I really need help. And he was just like, oh, but you're the stupid son. Your son Paul is the prophet. Because he found me. I gave him $10,000 cash. Because he found out when there was oil, he actually did pay Paul. And it was like, and now he's got his own prosperous little oil company. And you're sitting here, first he's like, stop your cry, you sniveling ass. Which sounds funny coming out of Daniel Day-Lewis. And pretty much telling him, Paul's the good son. And he just says more shit like, you're just afterbirth. Because Eli and Paul are twins. It's like, you're just afterbirth. Well, he's born and doing stuff. Where were you while Paul was sucking mom's teeth? Like, who was nursing you? Like, calling him nothing and worthless. And then, Eli's now sobbing, and he just grabs Eli and throws him down the bowling alley. And, first there's the milkshake. A lot of people might know this as the movie with the milkshake meme or line. Because he's saying, like, you have nothing, I have everything. He's like, if you have a milkshake, and I have a milkshake. Or no, he said, if you have a milkshake, and I have a straw, and I'm over here, my straw reaches all the way. I drink your milkshake. I drink it up. And, that's just when he chases Eli around, throwing bowling balls, throwing pins. And then we find out what he said to him after Eli got his chance at the church. When we didn't get to hear him, he was like, didn't I tell you I was going to eat you? Didn't I tell you? Beats him to death with a bowling pin. His butler comes down and is like, Daniel? And he's just sitting there and he's just like, I'm finished. End of the movie. You get that nice pretty violin sound that happened when HW turned the Derricon. That's the end of the movie. I was reading stuff last night. I guess one of the common things people didn't like was the ending. I can't imagine why. I mean, yeah, some of it's heartbreaking, like with HW, but I really like the ending. I like that it ends with there finally was blood between those two. And it was blood was finally shed. I like that. I like that it ended when the feud ended. I couldn't really find examples of why people didn't like it. Some people said how, the second he saw Eli, he knew he was going to kill him. Or he told the reason why his butler's unfazed and just says Mr. Daniel, even though there's a bloody dead body right there, is because, Daniel must have known he was going to visit him. He told his butler. And he told his butler what he was going to do. And that's why he just said, I'm finished. Other people theorize that he's done this before. But because of his wealth and power, he can get away with anything. But I don't really have any complaints about this movie whatsoever. Not the pacing doesn't bother me. I've seen slower paced movies that I still like. I mean, Christ, Once Upon a Time in America is 3 3/4 hours, and I love that movie. I would probably say The Deer Hunter with Robert De Niro. Yeah, I mean, that's 3 hours, but that is severely slow paced. I mean, that feels longer. Granted, this does feel longer than 2.5 hours. But the pacing doesn't bother me. There's not a bad actor at all. Granted, there's not a very big cast to begin with. I like the very minimal use of music. There's not much music at all. I guess the only complaint, and it's not even something the film did, I wish we could have seen more of this period. Like, not just him working, but like his lifestyle, where he lived, how he treated people. Because then we would have got a full spectrum of his character. But even that is just a small nitpick. That's not even a big issue. I can live without it. One thing I should mention is, in the beginning, when he's trying to get silver, he's alone. He's working by himself. He's working for himself. He doesn't have a crew. When he's way out in the desert, sleeping by the hole, he's alone. And then by the end of the movie, while he's rich and powerful and everything, he's driven everybody off, so he's alone again. I like to think he was humble in the beginning, but like, that was another thing. While they were, there's a part when him and his imposter brother Henry, you find out he did have a brother, but he died. The guy Henry just took his diary. Daniel's telling him how when he was a young boy in like the mid 1800s or whatever, there was a house. I mean, they grew up in like a poor farmhouse. He said there was a house that he saw and he thought it was the most beautiful house. He said, I always wanted to grow old in it, cook in it, clean it, have children in it. He's like, but I think I'll get a house out here. Henry asks him if he's going to make it look just like that house, and he scoffs at it like, if I saw the house now, it'd probably make me sick. You know, that's probably an indicator that wealth has gotten to him. Like, now he wants a big mansion like he does at the end of this. But, you know, I really like ruthless characters. I see a lot of Michael Corleone from Godfather 2 especially in this. Just his power-hungry greed. There's even a part where after he sends HW away, he's talking to one of his closest associates. He's like, after he sends him to the school for the deaf, he asks him how big is his room. He was like, well, he's sharing it with one other boy, but it's about a fair... Oh, he said he's sharing it with another boy, but he should be fine. He was like, how big is the room? It's like, it's a fair size. And he's just like looking at him as if to say, my son should have a bigger room because he's my son. You know, I really, especially when characters don't start out that way, they become that way. I like movies that have the descent of that character. I wish I had looked up more on why people don't like the ending before I did this video, so I could have talked about it and compared my own feelings to it. I mean, I would say the ending is one of the most, like, downer endings because of... I mean, I was kind of glad what happened to Eli because I didn't really like him as a character. Eli's not a great guy either. I mean, there's a scene where he attacks his dad because he's mad that he let Daniel do his work here. This was after he gets beaten up in the mud. So, I mean, Eli's not perfect either. and maybe because he's a religious fanatic and I'm an atheist. I don't know. But you know, the scene with HW, yeah, it is really sad that you know, that all the mean shit that he said to him. But it was very well acted. It was well shot. You know, I like how when he's talking to HW at first, you know, it's perfect camera angles like this. But then when it gets more intense, it's more like crooked close-ups of them. It changes when the conversation gets more and more heated, the camera angles change. I like that. Again, this is one of my favorite performances of any movie. Daniel Day-Lewis deserved his Oscar. He's just a mean, scary, ruthless, power-hungry guy. I would recommend this to people, but I think a lot of people would be bored by it. A lot of it kind of feels like a Western or like industrial America age, because that's when it takes place. But I thought this was a beautifully made film. Definitely my favorite Paul Thomas Anderson film. I would put this... The reason why I held off doing like a top 10 or top 20 favorite movies of all... Like, if I took all 4 videos and tried to make a top 10 or 20 of all those combined, it would be impossible for me. But that is why in like yesterday my general favorites videos, this was within the first 5, because I do think this is one of the greatest movies ever made. I did forget to mention No Country for Old Men. That video should have been on there. That movie should have been on that video. That came out the same year as this, and I think both I like this more. I do like this more than No Country. But I would say both those movies are probably definitely two of the best movies ever made in general, but definitely of the 21st century. I mean, yeah, I have favorites like 28 Days Later and, you know, American Hustle, The Fighter. I do have a lot of favorites that came out in the 2000s. Bronson, Wolf of Wall Street, The Departed. But as far as just being... It's also rated R for some violence. There's, like, not much at all. But some critics did say that this feels like Paul Thomas Anderson tried to make a masterpiece. Like, some of it kind of does feel like Oscar bait. And I don't know if R-rated movies are considered more prestigious and more seriously taken than PG-13. This probably could have been PG-13. I mean, I don't think there's one swear word. I think other than ass being said once. At least or goddamn or damn once in a while. But other than that, I didn't catch any swear words. No nudity or sexuality or dialogue about nudity or sexuality at all. So yeah, I mean, maybe he was trying to make an Oscar bait film, I don't know, but you know, I would consider this a masterpiece of filmmaking. I love this movie to death. Even the title, There Will Be Blood, is just a great title for a movie. When I first saw it, I was like, well, There Will Be Blood should be a name for like a slasher film or like a fucked up movie, you know, like Cannibal Holocaust or like a twisted movie. But now that I think about it, and I've seen more movies like this isn't a gangster flick, but gangster flicks or ones just about power-hungry guys, then you know, this is a perfect title. I love how the feud between him and Eli is just sprinkled throughout the film. You only get a few instances, but it is enough to work as a catalyst throughout the whole thing. Yeah, I didn't really mean to spoil the whole movie, but hopefully you would have seen this before you watched it. But yeah, I love this movie to death. I love There Will Be Blood. I think it's one of the greatest movies ever made. I don't watch it that often, but every time I do, I find a new appreciation for it. It deserved all the Oscars. In fact, since it was tied with No Country for Old Men, I would have said, yeah, best film, best director, and best picture could have gone to this one. I think those went to No Country, though. But yeah, There Will Be Blood, fantastic movie. If you haven't seen it, I'm sorry I spoiled it, but I love this movie. So, yeah, I'll just keep repeating myself at this point. So yeah, There Will Be Blood, great film. That's all I got. So for Room 237, John's out. Thank you.